Welcome to the Interprofessional Space podcast, where the spirit of inquiry meets healthcare collaboration. In our podcast, we discuss all things interprofessional education. According to the World Health Organization, interprofessional education is when students from at least two healthcare professions learn about, from, and with each other to improve health outcomes and enable effective collaboration.
Welcome back to Interprofessional Space. In this second episode, we're joined again by Dr. Melissa Owens, Director of Nurse Education at the University of York. We'll be talking about her work in developing and researching interprofessional education and how social identity theory helps us understand why students from smaller professional groups, like mental health nursing, need a strong professional identity to work effectively across professions and be ready for collaborative practice. We're glad you're here.
Let's shift a little bit and talk about your roles in the world of IPE and collaborative practice. So can you give us a little idea of what are some of your various roles that you serve on sort of that bigger stage with respect to IPE?
Sure. So as part of my role as Director of Nurse Education here at the University of York, I have become the champion as well for IPE. So although it's nursing that I manage, wearing that hat, I've then used my role to reach out to other professions in order to develop and build interprofessional education here at the University of York. So I'd say that's number one. As part of my role, I've done that. I was also aware of a Northeast region networking group for interprofessional education, and technically, York was a little bit outside of that area, but they've been developing a regional strategy for IPE. And cheekily, I then got in touch and said, can't we join as well, please? And they said, yes, absolutely, come on board. So I've also been involved in developing this regional strategy, which we're just tweaking now and hopefully will be launching shortly. In terms of getting involved with CAPE, again, it was just opportunistic. I was working as a nurse lecturer, and there was an opportunity to do a secondment to work on a research project looking at how interprofessional education was used in what we would call in the UK GP practices, which I think you call family practices in the UK. And it was a 2-year secondment, 2-year part-time secondment, and I applied for and got involved in that. At the same time, the university that I worked at, they advertised for somebody to be the lead for developing interprofessional education within the faculty, and I applied and got that as well. So I was then doing these two roles back to back each other. So one was about developing interprofessional education within the faculty, and the other was about looking at how it was used within practice, but specifically within GP or family practice. So that's how I got interested. The person who was leading on the family practice project also sat on the board of CAPE, and actually had to take a step back because their role was changing and asked me to go in their place. So again, I actually got involved with CAPE originally back in the early, it was somewhere around 2007, I think. I got involved because the person that was managing me on the project I was on wasn't able to engage at that time. So that was my first experience of being on the board of CAPE. My role then changed slightly, and I actually took a step back from interprofessional education for a while, but at the same time, I was also doing my doctorate, which focused on interprofessional education. And so I kind of kept my head down and focused on that as well for quite a while. And then I got approached by Richard Pitt, who was the chair of CAPE at the time, to say, Melissa, you've not been involved in anything. We'd really love you to come back and do some work with us. So I actually joined as an individual member and started to get back involved with CAPE and the work of CAPE. I then reapplied to go on the board and actually didn't get in the first time that I reapplied. And it was only the next year, and again, serendipity, I wasn't going to apply. I didn't think that, because I hadn't got in the year before, I didn't think I was ready to be considered the second time. And it was Alison Power, shout out Alison, and she said, are you going to apply? And I said, no, I still don't think I've got enough on my profile to be considered. And she said, well, I'm going to, so I think you should as well. So we both applied. I got in that year, she didn't. She then got in the following year. So it's thanks to Alison that I actually came back on the board. Oh, so the original question was, sorry, that's why I've just paused there.
No, that was great. I just want to, you keep saying serendipity, like it's lucky, but my theory has always been that serendipity happens when you're prepared and you keep your eyes open. Right. And then you act. So I just want to put that out there, because it seems to me
that's a really nice way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be prepared. If the opportunity arrives and you're not ready or not willing to step up, then that passes you by. So, I just encourage you to take some ownership of that.
Well, right. Because I guess, Melissa, knowing you, it's like, I know you're a hard worker, and I know also, like, you're prepared to, like, ask for stuff just to see if you can get it. but being like ready to be like, you know what, if I don't, then I don't, I'll try again later. You just kind of just keep going, and you just take it on the chin. You're like, all right, this time it didn't work out, but like, next time it might. And then that's how you just end up getting because you put yourself out there in places where a lot of people would feel like, I don't feel like I am confident enough to do that, or that I have I want to be that vulnerable, or I want to even to try something, not get it, and then try again. A lot of people would have been like, I don't know, I didn't get it in the first time, but it's like, how often do we, it's like, that's just one little hiccup. You just, so.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, thank you. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to go on a leadership course for women in higher education, and we had some really inspirational women come to talk to us, and one of them, a couple of them, talked about how the first time that they'd applied for something, they didn't get it, and they then went away and said, why didn't I get it? What do I need in order to fill those gaps that will enable me to succeed next time? And I don't think I've ever forgotten those inspirational speakers. So I do try to look at things as opportunities. So, okay, I haven't got it this time. That means I need to go away and do some more work to upskill myself in some way. And it's about listening to that message and saying, what else do I need in my profile in order to take that next step?
So being on a board such as CAPE, that feels a little intimidating to me, frankly. What kind of encouragement would you give to me and to the other listeners maybe who are not on a board like that? And what, kind of what are the things that you do? What drew you to that, and what kind of work do you do in that role particularly?
If I could just take a step back for a second and say, as women, we don't tend to be so good at putting ourselves forward. Men are much more likely to say, okay, I'm going to apply for that. I don't meet all the criteria. I'm not sure I've got the right level of experience, but I'm going to go for it anyway. And if they don't want me, they won't take me. Women, conversely, are more likely to wait until they're asked, and will absolutely make sure that they hit all that criteria. So we don't have the same level of confidence. So I would say to men out there, keep doing what you're doing. But to all those women out there, take a leaf out of our male colleagues' books and just think you are good enough. And if somebody is then going to say, okay, not this time, take that as an opportunity to look at what else you need to do to help you to fill those gaps. I always talk about a 4-year plan. I think 4 years is a really good target to go for, because you can't achieve everything in 1 year. So some things that you need to do, like to go onto a board of CAPE, you need to show that you've got that continuity. So have I published? Okay, I might have got one thing out this year, but actually, have I got anything out last year and the year before and the year before that? So looking forwards, 4-year plan, I'm going to make sure that I publish at least once in each of those 4 years, so that I can demonstrate that I've got that continuity of experience. So that's one of the things that I would say is not just to think I've got one thing, but to make sure that you've got that continuity of experience as well. So 2 things there really. One is just go for it, but B, look at your profile and try to ensure that if you can't fulfill the criteria in 1 year, then actually think about how you plan going forwards. And the other thing I'd say is get yourself a good mentor. And it doesn't have to be an official mentor. It could be an informal one as well. I can remember sitting down with somebody who was an unofficial, informal mentor, who looked at my CV for me and said, Melissa, you're too diverse. You need to focus on one thing. What's your unique contribution? Where do you want to focus on? And that one conversation was probably the most pivotal thing that helped me focus on developing my portfolio that enabled me to eventually get on the board. That's what I would say, because I made sure that my publications were around IPE, my research was around IPE, my presentations were around IPE, my PhD or my doctorate of education, it was around IPE, and I always go back to that one conversation. One of the other things that I'd recommend for people to get involved in organisations like CAPE is we have working groups. We have 4 different working groups, and they are led by people who are on the board, but the members of those groups who get involved with the activities aren't members. So aren't board members. They are members of CAPE, but they're not board members. And I think actually becoming a member of one of those working groups really helps you to get that understanding of the work that's being done. It gives you the opportunity to develop your area of expertise as well, and your interests in IPE as well. So yeah, if you get the opportunity to get involved in any way, get involved.
So how were you involved originally then with CAPE?
So when I didn't get appointed to the board the first time, I had a conversation with the chair at the time. It was Richard Pitt, who said, we've got different working groups, why don't you get involved in one of them? And so I actually got involved with the research working group. And as part of being involved in that, I got one of my first Journal of Interprofessional Care publications, top tips for writing research in interprofessional education. And that was purely on the back of being involved in that group. I then got onto the board, and the chair for that group was coming to the end of their tenure. And so she was then priming me to take over from her, which I did. So that was the first role I had as board member, was leading the research group. And you'll remember one of the things that we did, for example, was create a writing circle and published the 8 articles, which we lovingly refer to as Learning in Lockdown. And that came out of that group. Then we had new chairs start. We had the CAPE strategy that was put in place. We had then different working groups that were set up. And they were then set up at the time that I actually changed job and came to the University of York. And we were then asked to say which of the working groups we thought we were most closely aligned to. And because of my change in job, I felt I'm more closely aligned to the faculty development working group. So I then moved from the research working group to the faculty development working group, where I've been ever since. And I've been working very closely with initially Alison Power, second shout out Alison, and then later with Sharon Blumenthal, and we've been co-leading on that. One of the things that we were doing was trying to work out how to implement the standards, the CAPE standards within that group. And we had an away day where we were talking about what do we really want to do, and we were looking at what the CAPE standards were saying, and it came to me that I felt what was really needed was to develop a training program to train trainers to be able to deliver interprofessional education. And so that's what we've been working on predominantly since I actually started in that role, is developing this training course. We've done a lot of scoping of the literature. We have developed a questionnaire which has gone out across Ireland and is about to go out across the UK. We have identified what the key attributes, behaviours, skills, knowledge of facilitators needs to be. And we've identified what the key elements that need to go into the training programme are as well. So our aim is in this coming year is actually to have that package ready so that as an organisation we can offer that to people who can actually do what I've referred to as being CAPE marked rather than kite marked, to come and to do the training and then to be able to deliver it within their own organisations.
And that's something really unique that you guys do, is you go around, you deliver workshops, right, to help organizations with interprofessional education and embedding that into their practice and doing kind of what best practice.
Yeah. So one of the standards was one of the things that related to the faculty development working group was about delivering workshops. I don't think it was ever meant that we would deliver them all, but yeah, so far I've done one on developing IP strategy, and we are about to deliver another on training facilitators of IPE. We've also offered advice to organisations outside of the UK on what they need to consider to do so. And then we were invited to write a book chapter as well, which is now currently in print. So yeah, so facilitator, IP facilitator training has kind of become the big thing for our working group.
Excellent. And I can't wait to see it rolled out. And is that going to be available to members? How is that available to members versus non-members within CAPE? Do you know? Have you planned?
So we haven't ironed out the details.
You're listed as a session presenter for the IPR.Global Summer Research Institute. And what topics did you cover in your sessions, and what are your aims for those attendees, the fellows that attend?
Okay, so I think just to add that I became involved in IPR.G whilst I was still the chair for the research development group within CAPE. So it was purely through my involvement in CAPE that I got involved in IPR.G. And I'm now part of the steering committee for IPR.G as well. And even though I'm no longer on the research group for CAPE, I felt it was important that I continued my involvement with that. I have a particular passion for research, a particular passion in IPE, and it's not research in IPE. It's not just about doing the research, it's actually about supporting others to do the research. So the Summer Research Institute was launched for the first time this year, but the planning for it took place last year. And I was so keen to go and be involved in that I actually paid for my own flight to go over to be involved in the planning. And it was an amazing opportunity. And on the back of that, I was then involved with the other organisers to put in a bid for some money to support the development and delivery of that, of the first Summer Research Institute. And we were successful in getting $14,732 towards the Summer Research Institute at the SRI.
Wow.
That then enabled them to say to me, actually, although we're going to be delivering it this year as a pilot, we're only going to be delivering it to people from North America. We're going to be offering it to people from North America. Actually, we'd actually like you to come out and do the delivery from over here so that we've actually got people all in the same place. So I flew out this year, and part of the grant money then paid for my flights this time around to go out. It was actually only one session that I did for that, and it was on using qualitative research in order to research in interprofessional education. So that was what I did there. So because I was going out anyway, I was also asked if I'd actually go out a day early and deliver a professional development day to the faculty staff at Princeton State University, which is where IPR.G is hosted. So I felt really privileged to be asked and to go, and I was the only speaker to go and deliver this day for them. So they wanted three elements. One was around supporting students with neurodiversity, but the other two elements were around IPE facilitation. So one of the sessions was around preparing IPE facilitators. And then the final element, which is again something that I'm particularly interested in, and that's preparing people to facilitate SIM IPE. So I went and it was a half day that I did, and I went and delivered those three things. And then I actually delivered the online session on qualitative research for researching in IPE.
That's really interesting.
I've got a little plaque.
Oh, really?
Which I thought, should I have it behind me? And I thought, no, I won't do that.
I think it's really interesting that you got to the level of facilitation for IPE and then for IPE SIM. Did you find a lot of differences in those when you kind of really dug right down into that?
Yes.
Like, can you give us one example maybe of something from the SIM that would be?
Yeah. So there are key things for facilitating IPE, and one is around you're not teaching, you are facilitating, and you have to manage students who might be really quiet, some who might be overbearing, some who might actually be there might be promoting conflict between different students in the group. So that's your IPE facilitator. Then within SIM IPE, you've got three different elements to the activity. You've got the pre-brief, you've got the simulation activity itself, and then you've got the debrief. One of the key mistakes that people can make in facilitating SIM IPE is focusing the simulation scenario on something that's clinical rather than specifically the interaction between the students from the different professions. So writing a really good simulation scenario goes above and beyond what the skill that you would expect to see for people who are experts in facilitating SIM per se, but it also goes beyond the expertise that you would see in facilitators of IPE specifically. So that's number one. I know you only asked for one, but I'm going to give you two, because the second one is around the debrief. And again, the debrief, there are various models for debriefing that we see in simulation. There have been some key questions that have been developed specifically to support facilitation within debrief. But again, the debrief needs to focus specifically on how well did you interact and work together in order to achieve what you needed to achieve within that scenario, rather than actually achieving the clinical outcome. So those are the two key areas within SIM, I would say.
Thank you.
Do you then have a favorite debrief model or what your kind of go-to is?
I don't think it particularly matters what kind of model you want to use. There's inductive models where you can actually get students to ask the questions themselves and then you can facilitate that. Or there's the deductive models where you can actually have a set of questions. And I think as long as those questions are focusing on how well they interact with each other rather than on the clinical skills, I think it's fine. What I think is missing in the literature to date is around how you support the students who are observing the students doing the scenario. So you'll have a small group of students who are actually undertaking the SIM activity, and then the other students will be observing, often in another room. And I think it's really important that you have a facilitator with those students with a set of prompt questions to be able to say, what do you think they did well there? So they're actually reflecting in practice on what's actually taking place. And then within the debrief, once you bring the other students back in, you've then got the opportunity to reflect on practice. And I think that's something that's missing in the literature, is that how do we facilitate that reflection in practice when that practice is simulation and it's IPE?
That's a great point. So you've identified one gap in IPE research, but are there other areas of interest or other gaps that you want to talk to us about today?
Yeah, I think that we've now moved on within our understanding of IPE and what's needed in relation to IPE and collaborative practice. So we now often talk about IPE CP rather than IPE or just CP. And we now know that actually just evaluating one single interprofessional education activity doesn't actually give us much. What we need to know is about the sustainability. How do we ensure that we have students who, at the point of qualification, are actually competent in order to be able to work collaboratively, and how do we ensure we sustain that? So it's not about just looking at one specific activity, doing an evaluation, writing it up and publishing it. It's about looking at actually the whole journey, and I think we need to do far more that looks longitudinally at developing a whole system of interprofessional education as a pedagogy rather than just as a one-off learning activity.
That's fantastic. So rather than the idea of check the box, oh, we did IPE, right? We did this session, looking at it as really as a having students recognize themselves as interprofessional team members in addition to their profession-specific roles.
Yeah.
Got it.
I also think historically, and I know we've moved away from this quite a bit now, but there was always a tendency to say, well, does it work? Can we prove it? And I think we've moved away from that. But I would also like to see far more qualitative research carried out about how people have experienced interprofessional education. How have we truly collaborated and worked together in order to deliver this interprofessional education? So it's not just about the outcome from what the students are doing, it's the process that we need to be researching and evaluating as well to ensure that we're actually doing it in the way that we want our students then to be doing it in the future.
So Melissa, you've mentioned Interprofessional.Global earlier in our discussion. Can you revisit that and just tell us more about that for people who may not know?
Yes, so CAPE is a national organisation. It's the only network in the UK for interprofessional education and collaborative practice, and then feed into Interprofessional.Global and Interprofessional.Research.Global. So in terms of the Interprofessional.Global, I also then am involved in that, and the area that I'm involved in there is around accreditation excellence. So again, we have across the globe, we keep talking about how we want our students to be collaborative practice ready, to use the World Health Organization definition from 2010. But then we have different standards, we have different proficiencies, different competencies that different parts of the world have. So what is it that means? What does collaborative practice ready actually mean? So that's something that we've been looking at as part of IPE.G, and I led a presentation to the IPE.G Global Cafe earlier this year with colleagues from around the globe, where we were actually asking people that question so that we can actually then capture people's views in order to be able to take that forward and look at, is it possible to come up with a single standard, a single policy statement that says this is actually what that means.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've also recently published processes for creating an interprofessional mental health identity amongst pre-registration healthcare students. It's a scoping review protocol. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So interprofessional identity is now really well recognised as being so important element of effective interprofessional practice, collaborative practice. And yet within the UK, as I explained at the start, we have 4 different fields of nursing. So the adult field tends to be the largest field, and then the number of students in the other fields are significantly smaller in comparison. I also talked about the fact that we have the same proficiencies, the same competencies that our nursing students have to achieve, whichever field they're in. That can leave students from the smaller branches actually feeling that they lack that identity, or they lack that voice. From the research that we know specifically that in mental health nursing, they have a really strong professional identity. So we know historically from the work around social identity theory and now extended social identity theory that people need to have a good professional identity in order to be able to develop an effective interprofessional identity. However, social identity theory also tells us that if that identity feels threatened, that actually it can make people less willing to then want to develop that interprofessional identity. Within mental health nursing, there is a lot of research that's been done around the mental health voice and the fact that they do feel threatened, that they do have this really strong identity. And so what I was particularly interested in was how can we support people to develop an interprofessional mental health identity at pre-registration level. So there's a lot of research and a lot of work that's been done around post-registration, because in most parts of the world, that's when people start to develop in that area. But I was particularly interested because our students at the point of qualification need to be collaborative practice ready, but actually in that field are likely to feel threatened because they're a small minority group. And therefore, what can we do to help build and develop that mental health interprofessional identity to help enable them at the point of qualification to be collaborative practice ready? So we've done this scoping review to look at the literature that's actually been carried out. And the first that we've published here is the protocol that we used in order to do it. And hopefully, following that will actually be the scoping review itself.
Oh, excellent. I can't wait to see how that turns out. And
Yeah,
I think for all of us, it's like, oh, because that's what our aim is, right? It's
absolutely. Absolutely. There's not been much research that's actually been carried out in that area, which is why it's a scoping review, I guess, because it's identifying a gap. And there really is a gap. And it's not. I started by doing it with colleagues within the university, and then mentioned it at an RPR.G meeting, and Gerard Phillis from South Africa said, please, can I get involved? So it actually then became an international piece that we've actually done.
So at this point, we usually ask a series of questions, and they're called the pivot questions, and they're based on a TV show called Inside the Actor Studio, but we've adapted them. So we're going to give you a chance to answer those questions. So what is one thing about your own healthcare profession, and I guess with nursing education, or you could take this in any direction you want, that you wish other healthcare team members knew about the work that you do?
Okay. I think the nicest thing about my job is probably something that's not well known. And that's in how much autonomy that I have to be able to go in the direction that I want to go. So, for example, I saw a gap in the professional education activities that were offered here. So I've taken that, I've grasped that nettle, and I've then put the professional education activities in place. When I've been told, well, actually, we don't have access to this profession or that profession, I've said, okay, well, let's go out into practice. Let's actually go and look at what international education activities we can do in practice. So it's about having the opportunity, I think, to be able to take my job in the direction that I want it. And I think that's the best kept secret, really, is that it gives you the opportunity to be able to take things where you want to take them.
Thank you.
All right. So do you have a favorite medical word or word?
Okay. So I'm going to challenge the word medical. So I have a favorite word. And if you ask any student that I've taught, probably in the last 20 years, what's Melissa's favorite word? And I suspect every single one of them will tell you, because it's one of the first things I say is, this is my favorite word. And my favorite word is paradigm. It's such a small word. It's only 3 syllables, but oh my word, it just has such a huge impact and meaning, because at a micro level, it influences how we think, how we act, what we do, but also at a macro level as well. The whole way that our health service and our social care systems are set up are based on the paradigm of how we think and how we work together interprofessionally. IPE came about because of this paradigmatic shift in thinking that recognised that actually we shouldn't be teaching our students in silos. We need to be bringing them together to have that shared understanding so that they can learn with, from and about each other in order to become collaborative practice ready. I'm mixing my metaphors here now. But it's the paradigm that actually underpins that. So I just think it's the most amazing word. I have to say, used to be my password for everything. I haven't used it in years, I will say that. But that's how much I love the word.
So what is a profession other than your own that you would like to attempt? Anything out there?
Yeah, so I think I said earlier on that when I was still at school, I thought about, which way would I want to go? Do I want to be an adult field nurse, learning disability, midwife, social work? And I think because of my passion for empowering and enabling, if I hadn't become a learning disability nurse, I'd probably become a social worker, and probably because it most closely aligns with learning disability nursing and that underpinning philosophy and passion for supporting and enabling people to meet their optimum achievement.
All right. Is there a profession other than your own that you would not like to do? You're like, not for me.
And to say that on camera.
It's not disparaging them.
It's just not for you.
Not my bag.
Yeah. So having said as a schoolgirl, I thought about doing adult nursing. I just could never have been an adult field nurse. I think my ability to retain knowledge of names of things. Don't ask me the names of bones. Don't ask me how the nerve systems all join up together. I just cannot do it, and I would never have passed if I'd have gone into adult field nursing. I'd have never have succeeded.
Just not your thing. That's okay.
Oh. I mean, do you know how to work out the drop rate on a drip? I have no idea. No idea at all. I'm far more interested in sociology and human geography and what makes people tick and what enables them to work together and what enables people to get the most out of themselves. That's what makes me tick.
What is a sound or a noise that you love?
I'm so lucky where I live in that it's really, really quiet. And I sometimes wake up at dawn to the sound of a woodpecker pecking at the trees in the woods behind me. There is nothing that beats that sound. It's just beautiful. The sounds of nature, I think, are amazing. But when it's something that is so rare, it just makes it extra special.
So what is one career that you imagined doing when you were a child?
I think that I have a very boring answer to that because I probably will answer this in the same way as so many young girls would answer. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to work with animals.
Oh, that's sweet.
We had at junior school, we had like an animal hut. It was a shed with animals in. I'm sure it wouldn't be allowed now. And I was the guinea pig monitor. And I just...
I'm sorry. You were the guinea pig monitor?
Yeah.
Oh,
we had guinea pigs.
That's
and my
neat.
job was to look after the guinea pigs.
There you go.
And during the holidays, I would take the guinea pigs home.
Oh.
And let them loose in my bedroom, and they would eat through the cord to my electric blanket and the television.
Oh, that's
fun. Poop all under the bed. But I didn't care. They were my babies.
So, Melissa, last question. What is a book you're currently reading or one that you would recommend?
So I've literally just finished reading a book called The Safe Keep. It won the Women's Book of the Year in 2025, and it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2024. And it was one of those books that just had me turning the page after page after page. And I'm not one that normally just sits and reads. I will pick up, read a few pages and put it down. But this was a book that I could not stop reading. And I don't want to give anything away of the plot, but there's a great twist in it as well.
Fantastic. So that wraps up this interview. And Melissa, thank you so much for being here today and sharing so generously with us. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. Really, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
So before we sign off, we do want to remind you, whether you are a student, a practitioner, or an educator, the work that you do is so important and can be very stressful, but you're not alone. Please take care of yourself and let's look out for each other. And we hope you can join us again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this journey to better interprofessional education and collaboration. If you found today's conversation valuable, please like, subscribe, and share the episode with colleagues. Together, we can shape better practice through connection and conversation.